Hello, I'm Gary Wright of FinextraTV. I'm at Sibos Amsterdam 2022 and today I'm with Alistair Brown of EPAM. Hello Alistair.
Great to be here. Hello Gary.
We've just heard a lot during this session about central bank digital currencies, and there's a lot of perception that it's going to happen, lots of pilots, proof of concepts. And one of the questions that's been raised is how will it integrate into the traditional clearing and settlement cycles? What's your views on that, Alistair?
So I simply think we don't know yet. There are approximately 100 proofs of concept experimentations going on out there. A sand dollar in the Bahamas, the e-naira in Nigeria, the e-krona in Sweden, which is heading towards being the first country which is a genuinely cashless society. The Chinese have their own version, and so on and so on. How this all interrelates remains to be modelled clearly. I think there's a control issue here, which is that the central banks want to take control of digital money as a reaction to Libra and Facebook, the original trigger for the debate, if you like. Where it goes now is anybody's guess, but there's a lot of research that's been done. There are some very wise words, some very fine reports that have been written by the various central banks and indeed many of the consultancy firms. We do not yet know. It's fairly early days. There are some of those models that remain to be refined.
So it seems to me, given our conversations at the round table with a number of senior financial institutions represented, that they are not yet sure of the business case and how this will flow in terms of central bank digital currencies.
Well, that's right, and the variety of people we had around the table was exceptional. We had points of view from across the globe, from central banks, from tier one banks, and various other fintechs as well. It's that ecosystem that will solve this. But there's already a lot of built-in complexity that that ecosystem is dealing with in the first place, even before we get to this point, this new stuff. So we need to put in another 2, 3, 4 years of work before we get to something conclusive. It's very important that we don't destabilize what we've got already.
Yes.
We can optimize various of the models in play, and I don't think there's any doubt that wholesale central banking digital currencies can solve the correspondent banking issue, because in my view, as I've said elsewhere, it's towards the end of its life as a concept, and traditional correspondent banking is inefficient, and we can render it more so by introducing better technology, making it real time, making the data quality much higher, and so on. There are many issues around that, least of which is fraud.
Alistair, we've heard a lot about the academic research and read about that, and we've just had a session with a series of senior financial institutions around Europe. How do you see the two playing out in terms of the difference between the research and the practical way forward?
So we're right at that pivot right now as we speak, it seems to me. That phase of 2 or 3 years of thinking has pretty much come to a conclusion. What's going to happen next, I think, is that the central banks will put their line in the sand, each individually by each individual country, and what happens next will be the assessment of the potential impact in each individual jurisdiction. Unfortunately, one of the main issues here is in the long term going to be interoperability, and it usually is with all of the different systems out there, because it's one thing to get an in-country solution, but cross-border remains one of the great insoluble problematic features of this entire landscape. The potential to solve that in some way is there, but that's a second wave of evolution beyond those in-country legislative acts such as they are. If that first stage is in any way difficult in relation to its neighbour or set of neighbours, then wave 2 is all the more problematic as a result.
And finally, if I may say, there isn't a great spirit of cooperation or interoperability when it comes to these big initiatives. If I go back to the fact, as you mentioned, there's over 100 versions of a central bank digital currency pilot or schemes, how do you foresee what's going to happen over the next months or 18 months within that 3 to 4 year timescale that you presented?
This is going to be difficult. There's no doubt that if you look at the big picture politically, there's less and less collaboration between the major parties, the major countries in play, and that will not be very helpful, because this is all about collaboration from the top down. So there needs to be a lot of work put in to try and make that happen. And then, yes, the individual technological solutions will follow from that.
Alistair, thank you very much. There's a lot more to understand and watch develop in this topic.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.